So, welcome to this week's episode of Crap No One Tells You. With me today is a special guest, Jess from Third Eye Hypnosis and Beyond. And I have to admit, hypnotherapy and hypnosis has always been like a hobby of mine. So I was really excited when you said you would come in. So thank you for coming in.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gummy. It's great to be here.
So let's start with a basic question.
Sure.
What is some crap no one tells you about hypnosis or hypnotherapy?
Hmm. I would say the biggest is that you're in control. Most people that I see in my office for consultation, I have to explain some of the basics of what hypnosis is and isn't. And I start out by telling them that it's not all zombies and pocket watches. And that's typically what people, know. That's their reference point. Or they went to, a comedy show or something and saw people do goofy stuff on stage. So it's a 100% consent state. That's what people should know. They can move around in hypnosis. They can pull up the blanket if the air is a little cool. They can cough or sneeze, hopefully away from the hypnotist. They can scratch, although it's going to be a lot slower than that. I tell people it's going to be like really in slow motion because you're going to be so relaxed. It's like, do I even want to scratch? Maybe not. But yeah, you're in control. You're not locked in like zombies and pocket watches. And it's not truth control either. It's not true serum.
Well, one of the things that kind of surprised me, and I've heard people mention, is that their perception of time becomes
Yes.
skewed, right? Like people think, "Oh, I was under for an hour," and you're like, "No, that was 8 minutes."
Yeah, that's funny. I still am surprised by that. It's very neat. So I had a client back when I first started 10 or 11 years ago. I was living over by Lake Nakamixon in Haycock on the edge of Quakertown and really tucked back there, real nice setting. And this woman comes in for smoking cessation and we do the session. And back then I would actually use a stopwatch on the iPhone to show them that time distortion afterwards. Hey, how long do you think you were under? Oh, and like you said, it'd be like 5, 10 minutes. It's like, no, 34 minutes. So they're like, no way, it's wild. And it's like they just had a really great cat nap too. They're just super energized and sharp and focused. But this woman, I finished her session for smoking cessation, 5 eyes open, wide awake. She comes out of it. And I said, how do you feel? And she looks at me, didn't miss a beat. She goes, I feel good, but don't you think we should start the session now? And I'm like, oh boy, because I was only a dozen or two sessions in at the time with this whole hypnosis thing. And I'm like, what just happened? This is that somnambulist that they tell us about. She went boom. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we can start in a minute or two, but how do you feel? She goes, I feel good. What do you think if I ask you to think about having a cigarette? I don't want one. I'm a non-smoker. I go, exactly. We're done. I show her the phone, 34 minutes, and she's blown away. She's like, oh my God, that's crazy. I'm like, yeah, have a good day. Here's your tools. Boom.
Right.
So it's a funny phenomenon. Yeah.
So that brings up an interesting topic. Is a lot of people think that hypnosis, hypnotherapy is all fun and games and all that stuff.
hmm
You guys help people deal with a ton of issues, right?
Oh yeah.
So what are some like prime examples? Well, both now and in the past that you
Yeah.
help people deal with, because I know things have changed for a lot of people.
Oh, big time.
Years, right?
Big time. Yeah. So if you asked me this question, 2, 3 years ago, the lion's share of my practice would be smoking cessation. I've done a ton of smoking cessation. I love the work because it gets people healthy. They're able to quit in a very quick amount of time and get the tools to carry on and do the work and not go back to that temptation. Also vaping, chewing tobacco. I worked with my son for chewing tobacco. He was hooked from baseball days. Um, Fears and phobias, weight release, things of that nature. Last couple of years, however, business has doubled, and I'm seeing a ton of people for stress, anxiety, panic attacks, PTSD, insomnia. I had a client a couple months ago, psychogenic vomiting, nail biting, picking at fingertips and cuticles, all kind of nervous conditions and thoughts and feelings and emotions that have been spun up and exacerbated by the pressure of the last couple years and what people have dealt with. I call it the snow globe effect. It's like your snow globe is sitting there. It's nice and calm. The snow is all settly, and somebody comes and shakes it up. And
Right.
that's what happened to these people's lives, unfortunately. And typically, the uh, the mainstream health system, they do a good job. A lot of them have great intentions in mind, but to just medicate people and put them into talk therapy, it's not working for them. And they're at their wits' end and they just want help. And I'm glad to do it. It's pushed me to, bring my game up and work with a lot of newer things. And I'm, again, just grateful and fortunate that I can be there for them.
Yes. So I'm lucky enough that I've known that do what you do before you. Um, I even took a couple of classes just to I wanted to know more about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed was I had a handful of friends that have had some issues in their life. A lot of them had tried like traditional therapy, go in, talk to someone,
Hmm.
work through things. And I mean, one of them did that for probably 2 or 3 years, and progress was moving at like a snail's pace. Then he went in. I know he did some some sessions with a hypnotherapist, and I want to say maybe like 3 or 4 sessions in, it was like I was meeting with a different person. Like
Exactly.
it was just, and it kind of made me think like, is there really that drastic of a difference between traditional talking therapy and, hypnotherapy? Because they're two very different approaches to dealing with
Absolutely.
the same problem, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, first of all, I am not bashing an industry. There are some very talented psychologists and psychiatrists out there that do phenomenal
Right.
work. They help people. But right now, they're really overworked. There's not enough of them out there. My clients are telling me they're asking them to come a month or two out. These people have problems and challenges now. They're not sleeping. That exacerbates it. They have all kind of problems. So what I found, and I show clients a study when they come in for the complimentary consultation, the one study talks about psychoanalysis, basically talk therapy, 600 sessions for a 38% success rate. That to me is a horrible ROI. Behavioral therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, 22 sessions, 72%. I like that. Much better numbers. Hypnotherapy, 6 sessions, 93%. That's huge.
Right.
Now, the reason for this is these people's problems, or I like to call them challenges, are deeply coded, like in a computer program. So if your laptop, your desktop, whatever had a virus, you wouldn't dump all that data and sit there for weeks or months, even if you knew how to write code and reprogram it, right? You would use the Norton or McAfee disk. So that's what I do. I get into there to the subconscious and help them make those changes on a quicker level. Talk therapy, you're there sitting on that couch, semi-recline, whatever, you know what's happening, right?
Yeah.
So you're thinking about, am I here again? How many sessions am I in? Am I going to get that magical tool today to do some work? My stomach's grumbling. I got to hit Chick-fil-A on the way home. My car needs a repair. The house, this and that. You're so busy in mid to high beta brain waves, just busy chat, chat, chat going, where the problem or the solution, like we talked about a minute or two ago, is coded like bad code in the subconscious. So I guide my clients into that lower brainwave state, alpha and sometimes theta, where we're able to make quicker changes. The subconscious is open to positive suggestions like a sponge, and we go in and make that change. So I found that it's much better. I actually had a young woman years ago. She was seeing two different talk therapists every week for 2 years.
Mhm.
She said, I got more out of a handful of sessions with you than all that combined. And that's why.
And part of that is that when you're in the hypnotic state, a lot of that brain that interferes with actual progress and things is basically shut off, and you get to work with the area that actually will make a change almost immediately.
Exactly. The critical factor, fancy word for the conscious mind, which is just a filter. It filters out us noticing everything. Chaz crossed his legs again. Gummy put the mug down. The shadows shifted over there. The air
Right.
condition turned
There's a
on.
bird tweeting in the
There's a
back.
bird tweeting. It's just so much. If we noticed all that, we would just go bonkers. So that critical factor conscious mind filters all that out. plus it executes the commands of the subconscious mind. The subconscious is a big boss. It controls 95% of our lives. It's like sitting in a lazy boy chair with a remote control of our lives, laughing at the conscious mind because it thinks it's in
Right.
control.
So actually, just remembered as you're talking about this, it's a book I read years ago called The Inner Game of Tennis,
Oh, okay.
where he says, he talks about that specific, that once athletes train the subconscious mind, right? Like when they play tennis, it is not your conscious mind hitting the ball, it's the mechanics of the subconscious. And he's like, when these athletes go through major issues,
Mm-hmm.
it's because of the 5% conscious mind trying to interfere.
Yep.
Yep. So, and to me, that was always a fascinating thing as I was reading about this and studying this, is how much the subconscious mind really controls.
Oh, huge.
It's pretty much everything.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So that brings up another interesting question for me is, does hypnotherapy work for everybody? Like,
No, but most people, yes. So most people that want to be hypnotized can be. It's a 100% consent state. We may have mentioned that earlier. I don't know if we were on yet or not, but it's a 100% consent state. You know what's going on the whole time. But 3 groups of people cannot be hypnotized. The first is children 6 and under, because they don't have the attention span, the focus to follow what I'm saying long enough to go into trance, which is a gateway into hypnosis.
right.
And they really don't need it. 2 would be those under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of the session.
Mhm.
Although, if you had a couple glasses of beer or wine, little magic cosmic puff, it may relax you enough to go into trance. I don't supply any of that. I have binaural beats, much safer and healthier. But there's a point where people have had too much to drink or drug or party, and they're just like, yeah, bro, rock and roll party. Again, no focus, no attention,
So is that
no
theoretically
hypnosis.
shutting off the same parts of the brain, just in a different way? Is that why they can't be like?
It's because there's no focus.
Right.
Because I need the client to be able to, it's like a guided meditation.
Okay.
I need them to pay attention long enough to what I'm saying in the first 3 to 5 minutes to be able to relax and let their guard down and do that boilerplate, that bird you don't hear, that coffee cup, that other tenant, and again, and focus all the attention what I'm saying so that we can take that critical factor, that conscious mind, and put it offline. Put it at the beach, the mountains, the lake, wherever's your happy place to address the subconscious. So yes.
So we're the third.
Third would be EDIs, emotionally disturbed individuals, people that are under such heavy psychotropic drugs. They're probably in an institution somewhere.
Yep.
I work with clients all the time that are on various forms of prescription medications. Some even get off those medications through the work that we do together with the help of their doctor.
Right.
I don't prescribe or unprescribe. I'm not a medical professional, so they work with their medical professional on that end. But especially high blood pressure, even my mom back in the day, rest her soul, got her off high blood meds completely
And that was
with
caused by,
hypnotherapy.
and that was being caused by what was going on in her head.
Yeah, it all is. 95% of our stuff, it's the way we react to stuff, you know? Disease is dis-ease. We're not at ease. We're not relaxed. We're stressed up and wound up and triggered.
So-
And yeah.
So once you have someone in a hypnotic state, how do you get to the root of the problem? Like, how do you help someone work through whatever is ultimately the root cause, right? Because
Sure.
we're assuming there's something like there's a pebble in the
Right.
road. How do we find the pebble?
Exactly. So a lot of therapists believe that you need to get the client to the ISE, the initial sensitizing event. We need to find out when, Steve was 7 years old that this happened and that's what caused this or that. No, not really. Subconscious is smarter than all of this. Through consultation, intake paperwork, another discussion, I take everything and I narrow it down to a Cliff Note size piece of paper. And I write on that piece of paper what this client's challenges are. Stress, anxiety, panic attacks, when was the last one, insomnia, whatever's going on, what particular time of day, any possible triggers. I get a snapshot. And then on the bottom of the piece of the paper, what they want to bring in on the other side of that. Because once they release that in a quick and powerful way, you got to put something in there. So what's the opposite of what you're dealing with, Steve? well, I'd like to be calm, relaxed, focused, in control, sleeping better. Whatever they want minus superpowers goes on the bottom of the page. So now I have an idea what I'm working with. I guide them into hypnosis in 3 to 5 minutes. I deepen the state. I do the boilerplate that we touched on earlier. Then I do that change work. So for me, again, we don't need that initial sensitizing event. It's just subconscious for the last 5, 10, 20, 40 years, whatever it's been. You've created these temporary roadblocks in Steve's highway of life, his journey, so to speak, that pebble in the tire,
What
right?
rocks the wagon.
Exactly.
Right?
So you've had it, you've had your reasons and you did a good job.
Mm.
I don't want to fight with the subconscious. I want to tango
Right.
with it. So once it's addressed that way, it kind of steps down. It stands aside. It's like the doorman at the club that snuck around the corner for a cigarette break, and we'll work with him later. And now you have access to the club.
Right.
So once that critical factor, that conscious mind is off to the beach, mountains, lake, wherever, I do that direct change work. Subconscious for the last 5, 10, 50 years, you've caused these temporary challenges. You've had your reasons. You did a good job. Enough.
Right.
It's not what's best for Steve mentally, emotionally, physically. If they're spiritual, spiritual as well. What is much better is to do this instead. Release all that, bring this instead. I spin it up. I reinforce it with scripts, usually, other tools. Do some anchoring to a favorite color. So when they leave the office and they see that color, like a background running program on the phone, doesn't matter if you realize it's there or not, it's doing its job, reinforcing all that good stuff. Future pacing at the end, which is huge, having them see themselves on a little screen, like a phone or a tablet. Same situation because life goes on, but they're handling it much different. They've been sleeping better since that first, second, third session, whatever. They're using the tools of self-hypnosis or watching the videos I sent them, audiobooks, whatever the homework is, or supplementing good stuff. Somebody told me, don't call it homework. It sounds heavy. Call it supplemental tools, whatever works for you. But yeah, words are powerful though. So that makes sense too. But yeah, do the future pacing, have them see themselves in these same situations where in the past they would have struggled. Now they're handling it much different. They stretch the scene, iPad to IMAX with doing that. All the great feelings, thoughts, emotions, all that good stuff gets bigger, better, bolder. They take one step forward into that future you, absorb all that stuff. It trains Gummy, the subconscious mind and the emotional body, what to expect moving forward. Night of the session, next day, weeks, months, years, depending on what we're dealing with. Bring them out, give them some self-hypnosis, a bunch of other tools. See you in a week.
Yeah. It's interesting because I always remember someone saying, I don't remember who said it, is everybody does the best they can with the tools that they have.
Yes.
So to me, this process sounds like you may have developed a tool in your arsenal, which sits in your subconscious mind, at age 10, 12, 14, whatever the age is, right? And teenagers aren't the most effective at coming up with what would be a reasonable response to something.
Right.
Yet that sits in your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And you've used that tool your entire life because you're not consciously using it. It's your subconscious that's using that.
Yeah, it's like bad code in a computer. It just runs.
So you were basically talking about swapping out the tool, saying, hey, how about we use the hammer instead of the screwdriver on this screw? Right?
Exactly.
So people are able to really swap how they react to things without realizing that they've swapped out how they react to things until they're in the situation.
Yeah, it's automatic through the chair work, the hypnotherapy, but then the tools that they use reinforce that. So it's all a matter of really creating new neural net pathways in the brain. So we all have had instances where we had a bad night's sleep. We get up, we trip, spill the coffee, kick the dog. I'm so sorry. It's going to be one of those days. Flip side is good night's sleep. You get up, you're feeling like a champ. I'm going to own this day. We get what we focus on. So it's getting clients to realize that. And if they are having a struggle, to not let it go the whole day, to use a pattern interrupt, to break those thought patterns and to choose new ones through power poses, through breathing exercises, binaural beats, EFT tapping, using a tool to gravitate towards to choose a new, better, healthier path.
Sounds way more complicated than it probably is, doesn't it?
If you think it sounds
There's
that way, then it sounds
there's a
that
lot
way.
of words.
But it's, yeah, but it's not. It's not really complicated. It's just taking a couple deep breaths in session,
Yeah.
following what I say, doing the hypnosis. You get a folder. I ask you to do some self hypnosis for 10 or 15 minutes that night and the next morning. The following day, I send the client a bunch of videos because we don't want to overwhelm them on the first day.
So if you had to share one story with me where you're like, oh my God, I can't even believe that this transformation happened with someone. What would have been the issue they were dealing with and what was the transformation?
So many good stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
No, it's okay.
one.
I'm going to pick a recent one because it was something that happened in one session and we reinforce it with a couple others. There's been other great stories that took a little longer because of whatever. But the most recent one would be a gentleman in the medical profession that had been doing some really great work for 30 years. As a doctor, I can say he's a doctor. I'm not giving away his name or anything, but a doctor that retired after 30 years, but for 40 years had been picking at his cuticles and fingertips so bad that he could no longer write. They were so sore he couldn't write. So he retired after 30 years as a doctor and is doing some great volunteer work, but has to use strictly a computer. And it got so bad, the tenderness and the soreness with the computer, that he came to me. We did one session, and after that one session, 40 years of finger picking done. So I'm not sure how they're going to respond after the first session. Everybody's a little bit different.
Right.
He could have done great like that. He could have did it a little bit and then interrupted himself and used tools. But it was basically just a thought. He said, I almost did. And then I went, no, I don't do that anymore. It's something I used to do. And he distracted himself and focused on something more positive. So after the third session, he told me, he said, I wasn't really sure if this was going to work and all. I said, I know, doc, you're not the first doctor I've worked with, And he goes, but yeah, it's really amazing. He goes, first session done. And, we did these couple more sessions and I feel great. So it's very rewarding and refreshing to be able to work with people in the medical field like that are open-minded enough to realize how powerful everyone's subconscious mind is. It's kind of like chiropractic care and acupuncture back in the day. They had that stigma, but now it's more and more open and insurance is starting to pay
Right.
for it and all that stuff. So
People are,
it's good to see people they're realizing and they're doing the research and they're seeing on forums. I get clients a lot of times that they saw something on a forum that they were looking for their challenge, whatever it was, and somebody had good experience with hypnotherapy. So they're like, I Googled, you're in my area, good reviews, here we are.
right. And that, honestly, from having dabbled in this process, which is
Mhm.
the best advice I could give to is if you have something and you haven't been able to figure out how to deal with it,
Right.
give it a shot. I mean,
Yeah.
you got nothing to lose. 2, 3 sessions. Either you're going to go, this is fantastic, or you're going to go, well, maybe this isn't for me. But either way, you have nothing to lose if it's something you've been dealing with for a long time.
Exactly. And people are shocked at how quick it works. And I hear all the time, I wish I came to see you 10, 20 years. It's like, listen, put that behind you. You're
Yep.
here now. You went through that for a reason. Let's help you and give you some positive tools and move forward. So
That is awesome. So I want to thank you for coming in.
absolutely. It's a pleasure.
I'm sure I'll bring you back to talk about some more stuff, but
Outstanding.
we will link your website, your bio, some stuff so people can actually look you up online.
Love it.
So thank you.
Thank you, Gummy. Have a great day, everyone.